All right, this is Mr. Daniels reading the last chapter of The Outsiders, Chapter 12. Let's rock and roll, baby. The hearing wasn't anything like I thought it would be. Besides, Darian told me there was nobody except Randy and his parents, and Cherry Valance and her parents, and a couple of the other guys that had jumped Johnny and me that night. I didn't know what I expected the whole thing to be like. I guess I'd been watching too many Perry Mason shows. Oh yeah, the doctor was there, and he had a long talk with the judge before the hearing. I didn't know what he had to do with it then, but I do now. First, Randy was questioned. He looked a little nervous, and I wish they'd let him have his cigarette. I wish they'd let me have a cigarette. I was more than a little shaky myself. Derry had told me to keep my mouth shut no matter what Randy and everybody said, and that I'd get my turn. All the socials told the same story and stuck mainly to the truth, except they said Johnny had killed Bob, but I figured I could straighten out that point when I got my turn. Cherry told him what had happened before and after Johnny and I had been jumped, and I think I saw a couple tears slide down her cheeks, but I'm not sure. Her voice sure was steady even if she was crying. The judge questioned everyone carefully, but nothing real emotional or exciting happened like it does on TV. He asked Derry and Soda a little bit about Dally, I think to check our background and to find out what kind of guys we hung out with. Was he a real good buddy of ours? Derry said, "Yes, sir," looking straight at the judge, not flinching. But Soda looked to me like he was sentencing me to the electric chair before he gave the same answer. I was real proud of both of them. Dally had been one of our gang, and we wouldn't desert him. If the judge, I thought the judge would never get around to questioning me. Man, I was scared stiff by the time he did. And you know what? They didn't ask me about Bob's getting killed. All the judge did was ask me if I liked living with Derry, if I liked school, what kind of grades I made, and stuff like that. I couldn't figure it out then, but I later found out what the doctor had been talking to the judge about. I guess I looked about as scared as I really was, because the judge grinned at me and told me to quit chewing on my fingernails. It's a habit I have. Then he said I was acquitted and the whole case was closed, just like that. Didn't even give me a chance to talk much, but that didn't bother me a whole lot. I didn't feel like talking anyway. I wish I could say everything went back to normal, but it didn't. Especially me. I started running into things, like the door, and kept tripping over the coffee table and losing things. I've always been kind of absent-minded, but man, then I was lucky if I got home from school with the right notebook and with both shoes on. I walked all the way home once in my stocking feet, didn't even notice it until Steve made some bright remark about it. I guess I left my shoes in the locker room at school, but never did find them. Oh, and another thing, I quit eating. I used to eat like a horse, but all of a sudden I wasn't hungry. Everything was tasting like bologna. I was lousing up my schoolwork too. I didn't do too badly in math because Derry checked over my homework and usually caught all my mistakes and made me do it again. But in English, woo, I really washed out. Used to make straight A's in English, mostly because my teacher made us do compositions all the time. I know I don't talk good English. Have you ever seen a hood that did? But I can write it good when I try. At least I could before. Now, I was lucky to get a D on a composition. It bothered my English teacher the way I was goofing up, He's a real good guy, makes you think, and you can tell he's interested in you as a person, too. One day, he told me to stay in after the rest of the class left. "Pony boy, I'd like to talk to you about your grades." Man, I wish I could beat it out of there. I knew I was flunking out of that class, but golly, I couldn't help it. "Well, there's not much to talk about, judging from your scores. Pony, I'll give it to you straight. You're failing this class right now. But, taking into consideration the circumstances, if you come up with a good semester theme, I'll pass you with the C grade." Taking into consideration the circumstances. Oh, brother, was that ever a way to tell me he knew I was goofing up, because I've been in a lot of trouble. At least that was a roundabout way of putting it. First week of school after the hearing had been awful. People I knew wouldn't talk to me, and people I didn't know would come right up and ask me about the whole mess. Sometimes even teachers. And my history teacher, she acted as if she was scared of me. even though I never caused any trouble in her class. You can bet that made me feel real tough. Yes, sir, I said. I'll try. What's the theme supposed to be on? Well, anything you think is important enough to write about. And it isn't a reference theme. I want your own ideas, your own experiences. Ooh, my first trip to the zoo. Oh boy, oh boy. Yes, sir, I said, and I got out of there as fast as I could. Lunch hour, I met two cigarettes and cups and cucumbers. The store was about all we ever had for lunch. The sandwiches were school cafeteria, full of more stuff, and everyone tried to learn those greasers. We don't want to laugh out of that. Greasers were in the cafeteria. I was sitting in the fender Steve's car, smoking, and drinking Pepsi. Well, he and Tudor were outside talking to some girls when the car rolled up and 3 socias got out. I just sat there and looked at them and took another swallow of Pepsi. I wasn't scared. It was the oddest feeling in the world. I didn't feel anything. Scared, mad, or anything. Just zero. You're going to get killed by Sheldon. And there's a friend of ours. We remember killing our friends, especially gracers. Big deal. I busted off the end of my bottle and held on the neck and tossed away my cigarette. You get back in your car, you'll get split. They kind of looked surprised. And one of them backed up. I made it! I hopped off the car. I've had about all I can take from you guys. I started toward them holding the bottle when Tim Shepard holds a switch out and away from myself. Front door. I guess they mind their business. But they got the car and drove off. You were going to use that bottle, weren't you? Tudor had motion from the store doorway. Steve put him back in you, but I guess we didn't need to. You really cut them up, huh? Yeah, I guess so, I said with a sigh. I didn't see what Tudor was sweating about. Anyone else would have done the same thing, and Tudor would have thought twice about it. Oh, listen, don't get tough. You're not like the rest of us. Don't try to be. What was the matter with it? I knew as well as he did. If you got tough, you didn't get hurt. Get smart enough to touch you. What in the world are you doing? Tudor's voice broke into my thoughts. I looked up at him. With glass. He stared at me for a second and grinned. You little son of a gun, he said in a weak voice. I didn't know what he was talking about. So I just went off picking up the glass from the bottom and put it into a trash can. I didn't want anyone to get a flat tire. So I tried to write thought about writing about Dad, but I couldn't. It's going to be a long time before I can even think about my parents. A long time. I tried writing about Soda's horse, Mickey Mouse, but I couldn't get it right. It always came out sounding corny. So I started writing names across the paper. Daryl Shane Curtis Jr., Soda Patrick Curtis, Ponyboy Michael Curtis. Then I drew horses all over it. That was going to get me a good grade like all get out. Hey, the mail come in yet? Soda slammed the door and yelled for the mail, just the way he does every day when he comes home from work. I was in the bedroom, but I knew he'd throw his jacket on the sofa, miss it, take off his shoes, and go into the kitchen for a glass of chocolate milk, because that's what he does every day of his life. He always runs around in his stocking feet. He doesn't like shoes. Then he did a funny thing. He came in, flopped down on the bed, and started smoking a cigarette. He hardly ever smokes, except when something's really bugging him or when he wants to look tough. And he doesn't have to impress us. We know he's tough. So I figured something was bothering him. How's work? Okay. Something wrong? He shook his head. I shrugged and went back to drawing horses. Soda cooked dinner that night and everything came out right. That was unusual because he's always trying something different. One time, we had green pancakes. Green! I can tell you one thing. If you got a brother like Soda Pop, you're never bored. All through supper, Soda was quiet, and he didn't eat much. That was really unusual. Most of the time, you can't shut him up or fill him up. Derry didn't seem to notice, so I didn't say anything. Then after supper, Derry and me got into a fuss about the fourth one we'd had that week. This one started because I hadn't done anything on that theme, and I wanted to go for a ride. It just used to be I'd stand there and let Derry yell at me, but lately, I've been yelling right back. "What's the sweat about my schoolwork?" I finally shouted. "I have the job as soon as I get out of school anyway. Look at Soda. He's doing okay. He dropped out. You can just lay off." "You're not going to drop out. Listen, with your brains and grades, you can get a scholarship. We can put you through college. But schoolwork's not the point. You're living in a vacuum, Pony, and you're going to have to cut it out. Johnny and Dallas were our buddies too, but you don't just stop living because you lose someone. I thought you knew that by now. You don't quit. And anytime you don't like the way I'm running things, you can just get out." I went hot and cold. We never talked about Dallas or Johnny. "And you'd like that, wouldn't you? You'd like me to just get out. Well, it ain't easy, is it, Soda?" But when I looked at Soda, I stopped. His face was white. When he looked at me, his eyes were wide with a pained expression. I suddenly remembered Curly Shepherd's face when he slipped off a telephone pole and broke his arm. "Don't. Oh, you guys, why can't you?" He jumped up and suddenly bolted out the door. Derry and I were stuck dumb. Derry picked up the envelope that Soda had dropped. "Oh, it's the letter he wrote Sandy," Derry said without expression. "Returned. Unopened." So that's what had been bugging Soda all afternoon. And I hadn't even bothered to find out. When I was thinking about it, I realized that I had never paid much attention to Soda's problems. Derry and I just took it for granted he didn't have any. "When Sandy went to Florida, it wasn't Soda, Pony Boy. He told me he loved her, but I guess she didn't love him back like she thought she did because it wasn't him." "You don't have to draw me a picture," I said. "He wanted to marry her anyway, but she just left." Derry was looking at me with a puzzled expression. "Why didn't he tell you? I thought he'd tell Steve or Two-Bit, but I thought he told you everything." "Maybe he tried," I said. How many times had Soda started to tell me something only to find out I was daydreaming or stuck in a book? He'd always listen to me no matter what he was doing. "You know, he cried every night that week you were gone," Derry said slowly. "Both you and Sandy in the same week." He put the envelope down. "Come on, let's get after him."